everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, bringing to you another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series. And this is the success and failures of D-Generation X Part 2, where I am going to be talking about the second incarnation of D-Generation X and their entire run from March 1998 to March 1999. So, at WrestleMania 14, Triple H successfully retained his European title against Owen Hart with a huge assist from China, and Shawn Michaels would drop the WWF title to Stone Cold Steve Austin in the main event, thus going into a 4-year hiatus due to a back injury that HBK sustained at the Royal Rumble in January during a casket match against The Undertaker. So, with Shawn Michaels leaving DX, this would leave Triple H and Chyna as the group's remaining members. And on the next night, on the March 30th edition of Roy's War, which was the post WrestleMania show, Triple H with Chyna would come out and make history and essentially reboot DX in his own image. Triple H would cut a promo by saying that Shawn Michaels had dropped the ball and that he was going to pick up the ball and take care of business that should have been taken care of a long time ago, and that he was going to worry about the decisions. So, as I said at the end of part one, Shawn Michaels leaving D Generation X was the best thing that's ever happened for the group because Shawn Michaels was pretty much done. His back injury, not to mention his drug problems, were just spiraling out of control. So, him taking a hiatus was the best thing for everyone because Triple H would not only become the new leader of DX, but he would essentially take the group to new heights and pretty much expand the entire group. So Triple H would continue by saying that when you're in a war, you look to your blood, you look to the click, and he would point to the entrance ramp, and out comes Sean Wartsman, aka X-Pac, who had just been fired from WCW. So X-Pac joining D Generation X was a big deal. Not in the sense that Sean Waltman was a big star, because he wasn't really, but for a WCW wrestler to jump to WWF was a big deal. And of course, being the best friend of Shawn Michaels and Triple H made perfect sense. So X-Pac would get on the mic and cut a fiery promo saying that I get a call from my best friend Triple H and says DX needs your help. So he would go on to rip Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff apart and even go as far to say that the Clique's best friends Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were being held hostage by WCW, and if it wasn't for their contracts, they would be standing in the ring with DX. So plenty of shooting going on here. And for me, X-Pac played a big part in the success of DX. His energy, his fieriness, everything about X-Pac, he was the whole package and he was a perfect fit for DX. And as I said in part one, once Triple H took over the leadership role of DX, everybody got better, everybody played a big part, and Chyna in particular played a huge part in the second incarnation of DX. Not saying that she didn't in the original one, but I just felt that her role in the expanded DX was a lot more bigger and had a lot more impact behind it. So Shawn Michaels was out of DX, Triple H was now the man, and with Chyna and now X-Pac in the group, a new DX was beginning to take form. And one of the other reasons why Shawn Michaels leaving DX was the best thing that happened because it allowed Triple H to shake off the sidekick image because by this point he was pretty much known as the sidekick of Shawn Michaels. So he became a leader in his own right, and he would start to slowly begin his ascent to main event status and become a top guy, which we will talk about as we move along here. So at the end of the show, Triple H, China, and X Pac would get involved in a steel cage match, which featured the New Age Outlaws against Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack. And DX would help the New Age Outlaws regain the tag team titles. And we'd already seen the New Age Outlaws helping out DX before when HBK was there. But this was when Billy Gunn and Road Dogg officially joined the group. And this, for me, was probably the classic incarnation of D-Generation X. Triple H, X-Pac, Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and China. This was DX. And if you thought the HBK-led DX was crazy, the Triple H-led DX was probably even crazier and a lot more wilder. And they would go on to become one of the hottest acts in the company. And everything they did was must see TV. I would definitely put them up there with Stone Cold Steve Austin in terms of crowd reaction, promo work, knowing how to get fans' attention and making an impact. Obviously, Austin was still the bigger name, but DX was certainly not far behind. Now, whereas the HBK led DX, their behavior and sense of humor was more childish and juvenile, the Triple H led DX was kind of like that, but in a different way. They would do all sorts of crazy things. They would get female fans to flash during live shows. They would do parodies of the Nation and the Corporation. The Nation parody is absolutely legendary. Seeing Triple H do an impression of The Rock was just classic. X-Pac impersonated Mark Henry. Billy Gunn impersonated Godfather. And Road Dogg impersonated D'Lo Brown. And they would bring in Jason Sensation as Owen Hart. It was just a classic parody. The Corporation parody that they would do at the end of the year, I thought was funny and at times gets a bit overlooked. And I think it's kind of underrated because the Nation parody was so legendary and so strong that the second parody, which they did of the Corporation, was very underrated and doesn't really get talked about as much. So, DX, as I said, they would do lots of crazy things, peeing on motorcycles and all sorts of other crazy stuff. But probably the craziest thing that the Triple H led DX ever did was driving a tank to WCW Nitro in an attempt to invade the company. I thought that was probably the biggest moments they ever did. So it essentially not only broke the fourth wall, but the fact that WWF acknowledged that WCW was a threat and they were serious competition during the Monday Night Wars. This was DX's way of saying, well, if we're going to take the fight to you, we're going to take the fight to you on your own doorstep. So I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And this was peak DX, in my opinion. As great as the HBK led DX was, very special, of course, but this Triple H led DX was just huge, and their popularity was just growing and growing in a sense that they kind of just turned face without actually turning because these guys were so over. Everybody loved DX, including myself and my best friend. How could you not love DX? These guys were the ultimate rebels, the cool anti face. These guys, no matter how outrageous they were just so popular, and the fans just absolutely embraced them, as did I. I mean, I love DX anyway, but this incarnation of DX was just off the charts. And their main feud that they had was with the Nation. specifically between the group's leaders, Triple H and The Rock. They would go on to have a series of epic matches, which would explode into a full on war just a year later. And SummerSlam 98 was probably DX's biggest night. Triple H defeated The Rock for the Intercontinental title in an excellent ladder match. Billy Gunn and Road Dogg would regain the tag team titles from Kane and Mankind, and X Pac would shave the head of Jeff Jarrett to win a hair versus hair match. So DX were really on a roll, getting very hot, and it just seemed like nothing could stop these guys. And Shawn Michaels was pretty much the forgotten man of DX, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. People still missed him, myself included, but it didn't look like HBK was coming back. He would come in and out of the company. He would be a guest commentator for a couple of months, then he would go away again, and then he would come back as the commissioner, and he would essentially turn on DX and join Vince McMahon's corporation. And this led to a DX versus corporation feud. And it was just wild, seeing one of the co founders of DX making his former teammates' life a living hell. It was just absolutely nuts. But again, DX were strong, tight, and very together. Whereas the first DX, it was more about HBK. This DX, I always looked at them as kind of like a family. They were like a band of brothers. You know, China was kind of like the mum figure in some ways, or like the big sister looking out for her boys. And it was awesome. I definitely got the family dynamic more with the Triple H led DX than I did with the Shawn Michaels led DX, because Shawn Michaels was the top guy. He was the established guy, the legend. It was all centered around him, and the others, although they all played their parts, it was still HBK's group. He was still the man. But with the Triple H led DX, everybody was over. Everybody was a team player. Surprisingly enough, so was Triple H. He would not be a team player in later years, but to see him coming out and helping his teammates in matches, helping them to win and pick up victories, was quite rare when you look at Triple H's career, because he hasn't really been a team player, storyline wise. But in DX, he very much was a team player. So all throughout 98, DX were just red hot, getting popular, and very over. I can't think of many factions in the Attitude Era were as over as DX. So we come to 99. HBK was fired from the corporation by Vince McMahon. He would rejoin DX, and this was the only time in the entire history of DX that we had Shawn Michaels, Triple H, X Pac, the New Age Outlaws, and China all under one roof, minus Rick Rude, obviously. But unfortunately, this moment would be short lived, as DX would set up HBK to get brutally attacked by the corporation after his betrayal of the group back in November 1998. And it's interesting because, you know, Shawn Michaels was the guy that started all of this. So to see DX actually set him up to get brutally attacked was very strange, mostly because this was never mentioned the following week. There was no payoff to this, and this was done in reality to get HBK off TV so he could have his back surgery. But it was very strange. Maybe there was a possibility of a Shawn Michaels versus Triple H match, but HBK was in no condition to be active in any shape or form. So it's a real shame, really, because it would have been interesting to see HBK come out maybe a couple of weeks later and call out DX and demand to know why they did what they did, but it never happened, unfortunately. So as we move into 99, China would turn on DX by delivering a low blow to Triple H and join Vince McMahon's corporation. Now, this was a shocking moment for a lot of reasons. China was brought into the WWF in 1997 by Triple H, and these two were inseparable. They co formed DX with Shawn Michaels and Rick Rude, and after Rude left, China obviously stayed with Shawn and Hunter, and the three of them were just very tight. And China had always been by Triple H's side through thick and thin. So to see her essentially turn her back on DX, specifically Triple H, was something that nobody saw coming. And her reasons for joining the corporation was simply one thing: money. So China would no longer be the bodyguard of DX and Triple H. We would start to see her become a lot more vocal and a lot more vicious. And China's actions and her shocking betrayal would leave DX as a four-piece team comprised of Triple H, X-Pac, and the New Age Outlaws, an incarnation that would become quite important later on down the line. But the shocking moments wouldn't stop there. After feuding with China for a month, at WrestleMania 15, another shocking moment would take place. Now, the way this all played out was very weird, but at the same time, I'm glad it paid off the way it did in the end. China would turn on the corporation by costing Kane a match against Triple H and rejoin DX. However, later on in the show, China and Triple H would cost X-Pac a match against Shane McMahon for the European title when Triple H came in and delivered a pedigree to X-Pac, and this allowed Shane to defeat him, and he would brutally attack X-Pac, and he would also brutally attack the New Age Outlaws. So Triple H, the leader of DX, had turned on his teammates to join Vince McMahon's corporation. Now, for me, this was the biggest and most shocking moments of all time as far as the Attitude Era was concerned. Triple H had pretty much picked up the ball that HBK left after WrestleMania 14. He took the group to new heights, and for one solid year, the second incarnation of DX was as red hot as you can imagine. And then Triple H just drops them. Triple H would go on to become perhaps the biggest heel in the company. He would, as I said, join Vince McMahon's corporation, and he would go on to play a huge role in the corporate ministry. And him and China were pretty much a very tight unit as a duo. And this left DX as a three piece, X Pac and the New Age Outlaws. But unfortunately, that wouldn't last long either, as Billy Gunn would turn on X Pac and Road Dogg. X Pac and Road Dogg would be left as the two remaining DX members, as X Pac would also begin teaming up with Kane. And throughout most of '99, we would see various DX members feud with one another, and we would eventually see Triple H win the WWF title to cement his status as the top guy in the company. But of course, we would see D-Generation X reunite later on in the year, but that will be covered in part 3 of the D-Generation X retrospective. So, in terms of the success and failures of the second incarnation of D-Generation X, in my honest opinion, a complete overall success. As I said, the first DX comprised of Shawn Michaels, Triple H, China, and Rick Rude, and then later the trio, was very successful. But the second incarnation of DX, led by Triple H with China, X Pac, and the New Age Outlaws, was hugely successful, very popular, very over, and everything they did was a complete success, and everything they touched turned to gold. And I think Triple H turning on D-Generation X at WrestleMania 15 was probably the best thing he ever did, because Triple H, I felt, had gone as far as he could go as the leader of DX. He was ready to begin his climb to the next level, and begin his ascent to main event status and cement himself as the top heel in the company. So I think by doing what he did, it's made a lot of sense because he wasn't really getting anywhere as the leader of DX, and it was time for him to go to the next level. China turning on DX was shocking, but I think Triple H turning on the group was even more shocking because he was the man, he was the leader, and he brought all these guys together. So it was very shocking, but a brilliant move at the same time. And another thing that has to be highlighted here is the New Age Outlaws also played a huge role in the success of DX because they were already over long before they joined DX. So by bringing the New Age Outlaws into the fold, it just put DX on a real high. It just made them even twice as popular. And Billy Gunn and Road Dogg's catchphrases were popular. It helped get DX even more over. So they definitely deserve equal credit as well because I think if DX had stayed as a trio with just Triple H, X Pac, and China, I do believe they still would have been successful, but I don't think they would have been half as successful. But I think by having the New Age Outlaws, having the rowdy Billy Gunn and Road Dogg, I think really helped make a real difference. So definitely the New Age Outlaws deserve equal credit for DX becoming the hot act that they were during the Attitude Era. And when you look at both incarnations, as I said in part one, the HBK led DX only lasted 7 months, but look at how long the Triple H led DX lasted. 1 full year. That's absolutely insane. And look at the success that the second incarnation of D-Generation X had. It was off the charts. Not saying that the HBK led DX wasn't successful, but it was. But the second incarnation of DX was just absolutely globally successful. Everybody knew who DX was. Everybody loved these guys, and they were just mega popular. So absolutely, I would definitely go out and say that the Triple H led DX was far more successful than the HBK led DX. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on the second incarnation of D-Generation X? Do you look at it as a complete success or do you look at it as a complete failure? What was your favourite moments from this period? Was it when DX went to invade WCW Nitro? Was it the Nation parody, the Corporation parody? Was it the feud against the Nation, the feud against the Corporation? How did you feel about China turning on DX? Were you shocked? Were you more shocked when Triple H turned on DX at WrestleMania 15? And how did you feel about the entire group imploding and seeing all of its members feuding with one another? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Wrestling Discussion Series, where I am going to be talking about the success and failures of the DX reunion and its entire run from October 1999 to August 2000. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.